Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started because we have a very full program today. In addition to Dan from NEVA, we also have a case study, and our sponsor, Insight, has some few words to share with us as well. So first, let's get going. This is our agenda, and on your tables here, and hopefully in Mountain View, in San Francisco and Pleasanton also, you have a copy of the agenda. So we're at the 11:30 to 12 o'clock mark here, which is networking. You guys are doing a great job of that. And introductions, hopefully you introduced yourself well. So we're going to skip the formal introductions today. And then we'll get started with our program as soon as we're done with the announcements. Am I on the camera, Zach? Excellent. We are recording today's meeting, so we will be sending all people who registered a follow-up message along with the slides and the recording. Please, 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 please do the survey. I want to see phones in the air. Get that code. Come on, phones in the air. Capture the code. We are working on a way that we can reward you for filling out your survey by making that the door prize drawing entry. Hopefully by the next meeting we'll figure that out. Because the survey is really, really important to us in order to plan future meetings, to get your input from the folks that have taken the time to come here today and tell us what kinds of topics you might like us to go searching for in the future. And I will show you some of our meetings that are coming up here. Thanks to our host sponsor, Synopsys, and I work for Synopsys, and Ellie Mae, who hosted our meeting locations today, and Insight, who is our sponsor. We're skipping that. So I do want to celebrate our award winners. We actually have one of our award winners here with us, Paul Mack. So each year, HCI sponsors an awards program. They sponsor a variety of awards programs. The one at the local chapter level is the Analyst of the Year and Desktop Support Technician of the Year. And Synopsys, our person, Lewis, we should have dragged Lewis with us, you guys. Lewis was our Desktop Support Technician of the Year winner, and Paul Mack from LinkedIn was our Analyst of the Year winner. Both of these gentlemen were also part of the regional awards, which I have not heard the results from yet. You haven't either. I'll go bug those guys. The regional award winners have the opportunity to go to conference, and they are sent to conference by virtue of our national sponsor, Robert Half, who is the national and premier sponsor for all the awards programs for HDI. So the regional award winners get to go to conference. Conference is in Washington, D.C. this year, and I have a slide here about that. So the annual conference is coming up. It's in Washington, D.C., very exciting. We haven't been to Washington, D.C. before. We usually go to Vegas, Orlando. So Washington, D.C. is awesome. Right now, until the 17th of March, you can get an early bird discount of $200, and you can also get a local chapter discount of $200. So use this code if you have not yet registered. If you've already registered, they cannot backfill those specials. But if you have not yet registered, do register before by the 17th of March to get that additional $400. And put in this code, and our chapter gets some brownie points. Anybody else want to take a picture of it? Here's our San Francisco Bay Area Board of Directors. I want to welcome our most recent officer. Where'd James go? James Hagan is our VP of Membership, and James is from LinkedIn, so James is going to be working with us to increase our member participation and our active membership list. We do need some new members in San Francisco right now, because they've got 2 people up there with Josh. So myself, Larry Matzenbacher, who's here, Karen, who is in the East Bay. Is Hillary there, Karen?
Yes, Hillary is with us.
Okay, and Hillary is there in Pleasanton. She's from Robert Half. Josh is in San Francisco. Rob is on his way. Kathy is right here, and I'm right here. So that's our board. That's your board. And HDI, for those who are new, I talked to a couple of folks who are new to HDI and wondering, we're visiting, wondering what this is all about. HDI is a professional association for IT service and support professionals. So at one time, of course, HDI was Help Desk Institute. Most of us that have been around a long time know that, but it is much more than Help Desk. And for those of us who are IT support operations managers, we know that it is much more than help desk also. It's desktop, it's infrastructure that helps the customer service, which is part of what Dan is going to talk about today. So really anything that has to do with tech support, AV, printers. I know Dawn, at one of our board members at Wilson Sonsini, her team working for a law firm, they actually go to a city where the lawyers are doing litigation, and the IT team actually co-locate with the lawyers while they're there and make sure nothing goes wrong when those lawyers go into court. So service and support has really broadened as all of our companies have become more and more dependent upon the technology, and that's what we do. We're support professionals. So HDI members, for those of you that are members, who's used to HDI Connect? It's a really awesome community that is available to members. Also, the HDI site has lots of content that's not member-driven as well, but on the member-driven content, it's excellent because it is, if you ask a question like, you know, who's moving to Okta Verify, which we are at the moment, you'll get people answering you back about why they are, why they're not, and it's a great tool to grow your both connection for your immediate job as well as to create those networking connections that will sustain you through your career. You may have more than one job. Although I've been here for 20 years, I just got my 20-year plaque at Synopsys, which is kind of exciting. Came for 1 month, stayed for 20 years. HDI also does training, and actually I just remembered one slide that I didn't get done here today. I'll talk about it. HDI does training in the area of help desk analysts, customer service, help desk, service desk manager, KCS, and a variety of other trainings that HDI offers. I know Karen, who's in Pleasanton, Karen from Ellie Mae. Ellie Mae is on a mission to update their skills within their contact center and become a recognized contact center within their industry, which is mortgage banking. And they're using the HDI training to foster that. LinkedIn is doing similar with KCS. So lots of training is a big part of HDI's offerings. There's Leadership Forum. That's a type of membership. It's an expanded membership that allows you to be part of a peer group that is more intimate. I belong to the Support Center Leadership Forum, and we meet 3 times a year, and we will be meeting at the conference in May in Washington, D.C. as well. We also met recently in Charlotte, Long Beach, so we get to go a couple different places during the year. But the cool part of it is, Jung went on my behalf to Dallas recently for the forums. It is a really good opportunity to work in a small group, almost like your own board of directors, to help you to address issues that you may be facing or problems that your CIO has asked you to resolve. We talked about the early bird discount and upcoming meetings and events. So in the week after next, there is a webinar being put on by HDI, which is about award-winning service improvement. I mentioned that they have a lot of different awards, and this is another award that is presented at Fusion, which is the other conference HDI sponsors every year. It's more focused on IT service management, and they do give award out for service improvement. They also gave a KCS award, which was actually a tie between 2 people that had a seminar on that last month. April 6th, I want to point out, this is our neighboring local chapter in Sacramento, and they sponsor a 1-day conference every year. And it's an excellent opportunity to go to a conference, meet some peers, get some learning, if you're not in a situation where you can go to Washington, D.C. So this is like a mini conference, a 1-day conference, locally sponsored, locally hosted in Sacramento on April 6th. It's called the Big Event. And their theme this year is the IoT, Internet of Things and People. So that's their theme. April 28th will be our next local meeting, and we are excited to have Julie Moore, who's a well-known expert in the area of customer service and support. Julie's going to be talking on authentic leadership. So that'll be fun. The main meeting in April will be in Pleasanton at Ellie Mae. Thank you, Karen. And it will be multicast from Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich, and Rosati who is another one of our board members, and Dawn Dunn. She'll be hosting from their Palo Alto office and their San Francisco office. So we'll multicast to San Francisco, Palo Alto from Pleasanton. And the conference in Washington, again, May 9th to 12th. Our next meeting, our last meeting before summer, will be June 7th. We're still putting the program and the location together for that. And then we're really excited to do our tech taps again this summer, which are informal. And we basically get together, have a few beers, glass of wine, and talk about whatever we want to talk about, really. So we'll be doing that. We have a sponsor that's going to be helping out with some of the cost for that this year. That's what's coming up. And in between all of that, do come get social with us. Please go to check out our Facebook page, our Twitter, our LinkedIn, and keep in touch. And of course, HDI Connect for those of you that are members. I want to thank our sponsors. These are our chapter sponsors this year. Insight, as I said, is the sponsor for today's meeting. Learn It, CDW was sponsored last month. Plantronics, got a couple Plantronics headsets to give away today, and Drive Savers. And a word from today's sponsor. Can everyone hear me? Can you guys hear me in San Francisco, East Bay?
Yep.
Great. Just a reminder, everyone, if you guys want to have a chance to win this, just put your card in the front bowl, and we'll draw for this after the main speaker. It's a cool little product. So, Tim, I'll get the microphone from you.
Thank you.
So my name is Mandy Wolf. I'm from Insight. I'm a field account executive. This is Tim Hogan. He is our service desk specialist at Insight.
I head up the service desk practice for Insight.
So I'm just going to introduce our company very quickly. We only have 10 minutes, and then Tim will go into more industry-specific information. So Insight, if not any of you know, we are a provider of hardware, software, and services. We're a global provider. We are in 22 different countries, and we're constantly growing, 14 currencies and 15 languages. We sell products like Microsoft, Dell, NetApp, EMC, over 5,000 manufacturers. So we're really a solutions provider to our customers. Not only do we sell these products, but we help you put the right solution together. We're vendor agnostic, so we have all the professionals in-house to help engineer a solution to make sure that you get the right product for your company. Like I said, we sell over 5,000 manufacturers, so there's nothing we don't really sell. And we service 80% of the global Fortune 500 companies. We also service SMB, healthcare. We're also currently 474 on the Fortune 500 companies. We help businesses run smarter through intelligent technology. We supply services to our customers. They're warehoused in Chicago. We have a big warehouse. This is where we do imaging and asset tagging. Customer-owned inventory and hotspot program, where if you do have a product that you need held for you or you need something the next day because a computer is down, we can swap that out for you and manage that whole process for you so you're not wasting your time doing this. Data migration. We help customers move in and out of the cloud. We also help virtual data centers move virtually and physically. Tim?
Thank you, Mandy. This is a dangerous question, but how many people were born between 1982 and 2002? How many? Maybe a third in the room, would you say? So as I understand it, that's what's considered a millennial. By the year 2020, 50% of the workforce will be millennials. It's a mobile workforce that's used to working independent. Those people that raised your hand, do you prefer texting, chatting, is picking up the phone and calling someone the exception, or are you still someone that picks up the phone? She's shaking her head no, just to prove me wrong. This is something the service desk has to deal with, every service desk. We're seeing it in our industry all the time. Whereas self-service 10 years ago, everyone was talking about it, but we had very little to no adoption. I don't know if that's what you experienced if you've been in the industry a long time. But now we're seeing self-service and automation and all the different tools and the usage chat, IM, all becoming the standard as millennials join the workforce. And I think this is going to get more and more. So you see here, this is the standard support model, right? This is what, if you've been doing it 20 years or longer, like me, I won't say how long, simple single point of contact help desk, 80% of your contact was by phone, maybe 15% was by email, 5% was self-service. That's something in that area is what it's been for the last, 10 years. But this has really radically changed and is changing. When we put together agreements with clients now, we look at reducing the total contacts coming to the service desk per user by 25% in the first 18 months. So are you guys seeing adoptions like that yourselves? Is that in tune with what you're doing? Yes, no? Too big a lunch? Okay. So if we go to the next slide, this is really what HDI, Gartner, this is how and how Insight views the service desk of the future, and really it's today, right? Users can enter at any point, level 0, level 1, or level 2. That's really how a user wants to be empowered. They want to work independent. They want to come in, whether it's a self-service portal backed by a powerful knowledge management system. They want to be able to chat or IM, and we're seeing 25 to 35% adoption rates. Is that when we roll it out for a client? Usually within 9 months. Is that similar? Is what you guys, you guys are in the high-tech capital of the world. I would think chatting would be huge. Is that true? Getting some nods. Okay, how am I doing? I got 1 minute? So anyway, this is usually an hour conversation, so I'm trying to figure out how to shrink it down to 5 minutes. I think the message is, if you're going to be in the, in the business of supporting help desk or end users via help desk, you have to recognize the new model. You have to recognize who your users are going to be, millennials, and that they want the ability to, sure, they still want a phone when they need to, but their preference will be self-service portal, it'll be chatting, and I think we're going to find that phone, which is still the primary for most clients, will become probably second or third most popular in the next 3 to 5 years. That's how much it's going to change. And I'll just leave you with one other thought. We were talking about it at this table here. How do you get there? How do you get the adoption? And I was thinking about you're at the airport 10, 15 years ago. You're waiting in line, and someone from Southwest waves you over here and says, hey, we have this neat new thing called a kiosk. Why don't you try it, right? No one used those kiosks, by the way, for the first 6 to 12 months until they figured out you have to use a concierge service. And that's what we're looking at with the service desk as well. You want someone to use a self-service portal, you have to provide some kind of concierge service. Take them to the portal, show them how to use it when they have a problem. The next time they have a problem, they'll use it instead of calling you. So anyway, that was the only message. This is probably stuff you guys deal with, already know. But in 5 minutes, I tried to figure out something you might want to hear today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, please feel free to grab my card, and we can talk more in depth about how we can help you in any situation that you find yourself in. Thanks, and have a great talk.
Thanks, Mandy, and thanks again for participating in our chapter, because not only is Insight a sponsor today, they actually participate, which we love as well. So we're going to take a moment here while Dan gets ready with his computer for his part as our keynote for today. So I want to introduce Dan while he's getting ready there. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. We stand in the camera. I met Dan Turchin was actually introduced to us because he had proposed for conference to be a speaker for conference, and we got the list of folks that were local to us who might be potential speakers. In addition, Dan had reached out to one of our members about the topic, and this has been, I don't know, 9 months ago or so, I think. And we're like, artificial intelligence, that sounds pretty cool, because I had through my HCI Leadership Forums membership, I had visited Allstate Contact Center when I was in Charlotte, and they're doing a lot of stuff with artificial intelligence, which they've been talking about. Actually, they won one of those awards at Fusion last year for their work in self-service and service improvements with their artificial intelligence. So I thought it was a very interesting topic. The board thought it was an interesting topic. We talked to Dan. He has a lot of experience and is going off in a new venture that's specifically about support. Since we booked this event today, I've been seeing nothing but stuff about artificial intelligence, digital transformation, robotics, etc., on the various feeds on LinkedIn. So this is very definitely a convergence of new information on top of what we've all been doing for a long time, which is process improvement and automating everything we can as fast as we can. So with that, I'm going to let Dan, are you all set? Okay. All right, there. You got it. And you need to share your screen. So one more second for Dan. So give you a moment, and Dan will take up this in just a sec.
Alrighty, let's do an AV test first. San Francisco, can you hear me? East Bay, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi. I can hear myself, so I'm going to take it that...
and you can see the screen, yes? Great. Thanks. Okay. Take it away, Dan.
Fantastic. Hey, so first off, so exciting to be here because it's a bit of a homecoming for me. Roll back the clock, close to 20 years. I started a company called AeroPrize, delivering mobile solutions for IT service management. And met a guy early on in the AeroPrize journey named Ron Munns, who started an organization a while back called the Help Desk Institute. And Ron was one of my closest advisors at AeroPrize. And Ron introduced me to a gentleman named Patrick Boltema, who at the time was the CEO of HDI. And Patrick's a very persuasive guy. He convinced us to postpone the launch of AeroPrize until the next HDI event. And so we actually launched the company at, I think it was 2002, the HDI conference in 2002. Subsequently, AeroPrize was acquired by BMC on the Remedy side, where my new friend Pradeep is a product manager. So I started, sorry, commandeering your phone. I started Neva, we started the company last year. It's my 7th startup in or around IT service management or operations management. I spent about 4 years after BMC at a fledgling company, a little upstart called ServiceNow. And you might have heard of it. I joined, it was kind of a startup. It felt a little bit like Neva does now. And the only difference is that what we're doing at Neva is far more, it's harder technology to develop, and it's more disruptive if we get it right. But in terms of what makes me so passionate about what we're doing at Neva, which I'll go into some detail about, applying AI and machine learning to problems that we've all faced for at least the 20 years I've been doing this in IT service management. We think that this approach has got legs. So that's a little bit about me and why I'm genuinely excited to be meeting you here and presenting to you today on a topic that is pretty exciting, hopefully, for all of us. So a few questions that I hope to answer over the course of my discussion. And and then I'll throw in a couple bonus questions as well. So let's get kind of existential, right? Why are we here? No, really, why are we here? What is it that we were placed on this earth to do, right? Where are we? Where are we as an industry? Where are we as a species? Where are we headed? How will we know when we get there, right? So 2 questions, a little bit of homework I'll give you. So you got about, I don't know, 35 minutes or so to do your homework. First question I have for you is that one that I just alluded to. So give some thought to who are you and why are you here? What's your mission? What's your mission in life? And how does that relate back to what you do during the most of your waking hours that you spend at work? And then the second question, slightly more applied and perhaps more relevant, but equally important. And I'm going to come back to this. This is your real homework. Why are you better than a bot? It might sound like I'm being sarcastic, but we're all going to need to answer that question in the next 18 months. And better that we start thinking about it now. So with that as kind of a tee-up, I got to get to know you a little bit because I got a bunch of slides, but truthfully, a lot of the commentary will be kind of ad hoc, and it's much easier for me if I understand a little bit about who you are and why you're here, in addition to some of you that I got to know in advance. So if you could take out something with an internet connection, a phone, a laptop, whatever you got, and let me go ahead and share this guy. One sec. And you should see a polling question. Let me go full screen. And these are live polls. So my first question for you, why are you here? Select all that apply. If the answer is A, to understand how AI will impact ITSM, go to that, either that URL, polyv.com/danturchin744, or you can text your vote. That would be A. B, I'm interested in integrating AI into our ITSM processes. C, to understand how to prevent the bots from taking my job. We'll get back to that in a bit. 2 people figured out how to text. That's fantastic. Sometimes hard for us in IT. Let's see. Or D, none of the above. We'll let these horses race for a minute. I'm going to take it that in San Francisco you're able to vote. I want to make sure all 2 of you in San Francisco are voting. Could tip the scales here. Okay, so if my high school math is accurate, we're up to about 1/3 of you that have voted. Okay, that's good to know. So this is what I assume. HCI is kind of a practitioner-focused audience, and we want to hear some things that we're able to apply back in the workplace. Look at those horses race. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the next poll. And so we got one coder who's quick on the trigger. Which of the following best describes your role? You code. You tell other people what to code. Pradeep and I call those product managers. Use product coded by others. We call those project managers. Or D, you're a manager. You're a traditional manager. I guess if you're going to be on the back 9 by 2, you'd have to be on the front 9 right now. So only a couple of you. Okay, so we get project manager types. Probably help desk manager types, I'd imagine. Good, so that is the predominant one. Let me open up the next poll. So if you could tell me, which of the following tools you use on a daily basis at work? So I listed some collaboration tools, some IT service management tools, so ServiceNow, Remedy, Jira, Zendesk, and then collaboration tools, Slack, if you use Link, HipChat, Jabber. We'll be talking about the role of virtual agents, so it's kind of interesting to see what you're using for collaboration. No one's using Jive, no one's using Yammer. We won't tell Satya Nadella. I don't think he's attending. He won't be too offended. Though 12% of you use Link, so that will make him happy. Okay, very interesting. I hope you weren't just saying ServiceNow to make me feel good. It does make me feel good, though. Okay, last and final poll, and thank you. This is very, very helpful. I'll make sure I orient the comments accordingly. Let me open up that one. How do you feel about the rise of bots and automation in IT? So kind of a segue into what we'll spend most of the time talking about. You're excited. It'll make you more productive and provide better service. You're a little scared. What if they take over? What if they take your job? You're not sure. Maybe you're just starting the journey and maybe you'll form an opinion by the end of today. Or you're hoping to meet Jarvis from Iron Man, which also happens to be the name of the bot that Mark Zuckerberg developed for his house. I was referring to the one from Iron Man, who will not be attending, unless Terry tells me otherwise. Not sure we invited Jarvis. Okay, glad to hear you're excited. That is very helpful. We'll give that another second. No one's here to meet Jarvis. And with that said, let me cut over back my slides. Thank you. That's helpful feedback. This should still be shared. Unless someone can tell me otherwise, you should still be seeing my slides when I go to full screen. Okay. Okay. We're analytical. We love our data. Thought I'd bring some along to share with you. So again, kind of to preface this conversation about how and why AI and machine learning are being used in IT, thought I'd share with you a little bit of a background. So first off, some things that have almost become like mantras in our space, not necessarily in IT per se, but in the world of AI and machine learning. Thought I'd share 3 of them with you. So we hear these bandied about quite frequently. They've almost become tired. Conversations, the new UX. In fact, that's something that Satya Nadella from Microsoft stood on stage and announced to the world last year at the developer conference. Bots are the new apps. A lot of, this is actually quite accurate. I don't think there's much hyperbole here. A lot of app developers actually shifted their focus to bots. It turns out conversational interaction is a very elegant UX for a lot of use cases that we would have traditionally used apps for. AI is the new UI. You may or may not be cynical about that statement when I make it the first time. Come back to me in a half hour. We'll see what you think. I'm bought in. I'm a believer. I think there's some amazing things that a little bit of smart machine learning can do to improve the user experience, both for requesters, the employees that we support, but as well as for fulfillers. So a few numbers. 1956. So roll back the clock a few years. Turns out that's when the term artificial intelligence was coined. So it's all the rage. Like Terry said, it's all that she's been hearing about since we've been prepping for this session. But in fact, you go back 60 years, and a guy named Marvin Minsky convened a group of mathematicians at the time. They weren't even called computer scientists, at a remote place called Hanover, New Hampshire, at a college called Dartmouth. And they decided that there was going to be some point, soon they thought in 1956, when machines would think. They'd become sentient. Well, here we are today. We've made a lot of progress. But there have been some ups and downs. In fact, in the 80s, in the AI community, we experienced what we called a nuclear winter. And that was when essentially all of the government funding that was supporting these AI-based projects dried up, and it was diverted toward various sorts of Cold Wars and other things that we had to spend money on. And AI essentially went away until about 10 years ago. And then there was this reemergence, the AI spring, and that's what we're in right now. We've come a long way. 6 billion, that's an interesting number. That happens to be the number of internet-connected devices. Sometimes we call it the IoT, the Internet of Things. Devices that will be on your networks, and they will be requesting service from your teams, much like your human requesters request service today. And the only reason I bring up this data point is because it's an interesting juncture for us to all rethink how we deliver service. Because when all 6 billion of these probably won't be on your network, but let's say some non-trivial subset of them will be. And what do you do when sensor-based things, when wearables, when self-driving cars, when various kinds of devices appear on your network and they're unhealthy? You know what to do. We've got pretty good ITIL-based processes for when people have issues, but what do you do when it's the fridge, or the toaster or your Fitbit or something like that. So something to think about in terms of, maybe there's a role for more automation and maybe the need for it is going to be forced on us. 62%. That is what a firm called Decision Analytics, an AI-based analytics firm, says is the percentage of enterprise IT organizations that will have deployed AI in production in the next 12 months for at least one use case. 20%. This comes from Gartner. I thought this was interesting. Gartner says that by 2020, not too far off, 20% of all business content will be generated by AIs, by artificial intelligence. That's not one I had thought about, but as we think about our role in generating or authoring knowledge content, just engage me on a thought experiment. What if there was a way that a lot of those routine articles that we're authoring and publishing, maybe there's a better way. And the more important thing to think about is what happens when I've got a bot authoring my content better than I can. What am I going to do, right? And I'll kind of leave you with this, again, kind of a thought experiment. But I firmly believe that as we project forward, call it 2018 or 20 or fast forward even beyond that, anything that can be predicted is better left to the domain of machines. Anything that requires judgment is better left to the domain of humans. I think you're going to see that play out pretty rapidly here. But as we think about how to retool and how to remain relevant in our environments, it's a good, I think, kind of a useful construct. Am I adding value? Because there's some judgment that I can apply that's kind of innate to the human experience. If not, you may be ripe for being automated out of a role. Came across as much more negative than I intended it to be, but I do firmly believe that statement. Number 5, last and final fact. So 75%. So that's what Gartner says is the percentage of call center agents that will be replaced by virtual agents by 2025. So we've got a few years for that to happen, but probably not an outlandish bit of forecasting. Okay, so you can't open a blog these days or read your tweet stream without coming across some dire prediction about the coming AI apocalypse. And I kind of bristle when I see this stuff. Fallon on the cover of Wired, and then Elon Musk. This guy's supposed to be like the greatest technologist of our age. And he tweets out, AI is potentially more dangerous than nukes. And then we've got studies like this one in the bottom left. Just be glad that this isn't like the Insurance Underwriters Institute. Because they say 99% of insurance underwriters in the near future will be automated out of jobs. In fact, there was a high-profile article about an insurance agency in Japan that replaced 34 insurance agents. Only 34, right? How many agents are there in the world? But those 34 got a very high profile for about 24 hours. It dominated the news cycles. 97% of farm laborers, potentially, and even in our own space, potentially 75% of call center agents by 2025. So you look at these kind of headlines and these blog posts and, listen to our tech leaders, and you might be kind of alarmed. I feel just the opposite. I feel like, all of, this kind of fear-mongering does a disservice to the real way that AI and machine learning are actually being used. So this is kind of a world that I choose to espouse. And certainly whether at Neva or, previously at ServiceNow or every place I've been, I feel like this is a more accurate reflection of the world that we're about to be living in, a world where we're going to be reinventing our relationship with technology. And that creates opportunity. It creates opportunity like the Industrial Revolution created opportunity. So if you were on the wrong side of progress or of technology in the Industrial Revolution, and you were a Luddite, and you went out and broke machines with a hammer, you know what? Things didn't work out too well for you. If you were a hand loom weaver, and you made hats on a machine all day, you know what? It didn't work out too well. But if you were the one who knew how to use the machine or fix the machine or drive the train or service the engine that drove the train, well, you know what? That created a lot more jobs. If you were a switchboard operator in the 20s, you might have thought that you'd have a job for life. Turns out, that was kind of the wrong side of progress to be on. But in fact, if you look at what's going on in healthcare, education, manufacturing, transportation, these fields are being reinvented as we speak within a 20-mile radius of us. Look no further than my last company. We were based on Castro. One of the fun things about being on Castro is you're kind of in the way, now it's called Waymo, the Google self-driving car path. So you'd never know what kind of vehicle was going to drive by the office. But I'm pretty excited seeing what's out there. And it's certainly no hyperbole to say that every aspect of our lives will soon, if it hasn't already, been touched by AI and machine learning. And I prefer to think about that, whether it's from an IT perspective or from the perspective of our lives outside of work. I think there's a lot to be excited about. So thinking about, what's going to happen in the workplace. What's the future of work? And so I went to the dictionary, and it turns out there's nothing about the definition, the actual dictionary definition of work that is specific to humans. We don't have any kind of lock on the only species that's able to produce work. And all of us that took physics 101 know that as well. There's nothing about the process of performing work tasks that we're uniquely capable of doing. And in fact, I think the sooner we think about how we redefine what it means to work and who does the work and who controls those who do the work, the quicker we can reinvent ourselves and stay relevant. So I referenced the Industrial Revolution. It really is the case that in the last 200 years, since the Industrial Revolution, around the second half of the 18th century, we haven't seen any kind of disruption in terms of, the fundamental drivers, what we do during the 8+ hours that we're at work. In the next 2 years, everything's going to be shifted. And I think we have an opportunity as IT leaders to be kind of educating our internal teams, our organizations, our companies about what's up ahead so that we can become kind of more strategic providers of ways to create compelling technology-driven experiences rather than the ones who are just cowering under a desk, fearful about whether or not we're in the 75% between now and 2025. That's really kind of the thesis of this talk is, what does it take for us to be leaders and use technology to inspire our teams. And I think that when we can kind of eliminate the burden on us of doing the things that are very repetitive to potentially bots or to automation, I think that's when it frees us up to do the things that we're uniquely capable of doing. So I don't know if anyone's heard or seen this short called Sunspring, but trying to think of the way, before I talk about kind of very pragmatic use cases of AI and IT, how to drive this point home, that there's really nothing to be afraid of. And I thought, oh, Sunspring, that's like the most obvious example. So here's the story behind Sunspring. That is Thomas Middleditch, by the way. I'm kind of a deity in Silicon Valley. So, true story. So these, I think they're like Caltech grads or something like that. They have this idea, we're going to have an AI write a script for a movie. And unlike most movies, we're going to produce it all in one day. And we're not going to let the actors see the script beforehand. And we're going to just film it. We're going to do one take. So one take, script generated by AI. Here you have, I guess I need to share. Oh, wait, this should be shared. Here you have Thomas Middleditch in Sunspring, an AI-generated movie.
We went on vacation with a toe dipper.
I had to go there. Right?
And left with a cannonballer.
There's a snippet from it.
In a future with mass unemployment, young people are forced to sell blood. Something I can do.
You should see the boy and shut up. I was the one who was going to be 100 years old.
I saw him again. The way you were sent to me, that was a big, honest idea. I am not a bright light.
Well, I have to go to the skull. I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. That's a cruel tease. That's about a minute of a 9-minute video, and the good news for all of us who may be fearful of bots, it goes downhill from there. It is just awful. And so this was launched as kind of the pinnacle of achievement, that you could have an AI write a movie script. I look at that and I'm like, sweet. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon if that's the best an AI can do. And so across domains, we're in a phase that we call localized artificial intelligence, where we can use AI pretty effectively. We can train AI models to do specific tasks. And the tasks are pretty interesting, like, say, drive a car or detect from an MRI image whether or not you have cancer. So there's some amazing things that AIs can do at high levels of accuracy. But what we call generalized artificial intelligence is years off, decades off. And that's where you'd have an AI that has the full capabilities of a human. So I think even the most ambitious futurists would say, it's probably a good 40 to 50 years off. Even once we're there, first of all, we have 40 to 50 years to prepare. But even that's not necessarily a dire prediction. The likelihood is, particularly with a lot of early discussions about how we apply ethical models to the bots that we're building, that it's likely that we'll be a hyper-productive society even when that happens. I thought this is a good quote. Andrew Ng is a former professor of mine. He's now at Baidu. But he says that worrying about the AI apocalypse now is like worrying about overpopulation on Mars. That sums it up well. Anyway, so told you eventually I'd get a little bit more pragmatic. So as we kind of segue into how and why AI is being used in IT today, I thought I'd get about as pragmatic as it can be. So there's 3 key personas that we're all well-versed in, the key personas that live in and around the 4 walls of our offices. So I thought I'd talk you through just sequentially how AI is being used to make their lives easier. So from the perspective of the requester, the one with the problem, the fulfiller, the human agent, and the manager, in our case, the IT manager responsible for health of service, how's AI used? So requesters today are using virtual agents in lieu of a traditional self-service portal or calling the help desk or sending an email. Virtual agents can now get trained very accurately on how to answer a question, how to help a requester navigate through the incident submission process, or how to order something from a service catalog. Fulfillers, so when a virtual agent, kind of your new L0, is not able to fix the problem and an incident is generated, then AI can be used very effectively to make intelligent recommendations to the fulfiller. So the beautiful thing from a metrics perspective is this takes, essentially your L1, your novice tech, and it turns them into like an L2 or an L3. They became a specialist because staring in front of them is everything the L2 or L3 is going to use to solve the problem if L1 had escalated it. So embedded in an incident, I can now enrich it with context, like, who's the user, what assets do they own, where are they right now, what's their incident history, and then I can take all that context into account to make recommendations about historical incidents that are relevant, or maybe experts who are skilled in solving this problem that are available right now, maybe knowledge articles. So the fulfiller now has access to a bunch of additional content that the virtual agent couldn't necessarily provide to the requester. So you can have a much higher percentage of issues that are either resolved at L0 or certainly at L1. From the perspective of the manager, AI is really effective at surfacing insights. So mining a bunch of data and providing predictive analytics that can help managers make better decisions, like a couple examples. So looking at data based on trends in automation, I can see what are the kinds of issues that people have been asking the virtual agent. And based on that, I can decide, maybe I need to train my human agents in certain areas because we didn't expect, a rash of issues related to this particular virus or this particular storage platform or things like that. Other things I can do, I can look across all of my automation trends and make decisions about which vendors may be the providers of the assets that yield the lowest cost of service. Or maybe I can look at my workloads and see that, I'm overstaffed in EMEA and I'm understaffed in the U.S. during certain hours. And I can shift my staffing. So I'll show you kind of a schematic. This is a breakdown of kind of these key AI-driven use cases mapped to the respective personas. So fulfiller assistance for obviously the fulfiller. I didn't talk about auto mapping, but that's a way for kind of a UI-free kind of entry point, good use of AI, where you can actually have the AI intercept inbound requests and either auto-categorize or predict the right assignment group, or maybe in the case of like change management, you can have AI assess or assign a risk score to a change, or in problem management, good common use case is recommended triage procedure based on related historical problems. These are all relatively low risk, low impact applications of AI that basically allow you to benefit from automation at scale, but really don't invoke any kind of apocalyptic fears of bots taking jobs. Predictive analytics for managers, and lastly, data modeling. So what you'll find is that kind of a new tool in the kind of ITSM palette, or that's a mixed metaphor, a new brush in the ITSM palette, still not perfect, will be essentially a data science workbench. So your traditional kind of ITSM sysadmin increasingly will be expected to be tuning recommendation models. So figuring out, what's the confidence threshold below which I don't want machine learning to make a prediction at all. So you'll start to see some of these kinds of gauges and levers built right into ITSM tools. And it'll be expected that without being a data scientist per se, all of us in around IT are going to start to have the tools that will let us behave like data scientists. So I'll show you each of these use cases. So here's an example of virtual agent. Just full disclosure, this happens to be the Neva virtual agent, but I've just mentioned that in case you're wondering where it came from. I'll go ahead and play this video to give you a sense of some common use cases. This is a headless virtual agent. This happens to be using Slack as a head sitting on the virtual agent. This could be embedded in a web portal, a self-service portal, Slack, Skype, Link, HipChat, whatever it is that your end users, wherever your end users are going to request support, that's where you really want the virtual agent. It can be voice-driven. In this case, it's text-driven. So a couple use cases. So here's one where ask a question about how to add a node to the storage cluster. Requester click, not helpful. So it's okay. Virtual agent doesn't always get it right. Generates an incident, which is enriched. So now the fulfiller's view of the incident has context-based suggestions built into it. So second example, how do I reset my password? So wheelhouse, right? These are the things that we would love to be able to deflect 100% of those questions to self-service. Ideally L0, and preferably something that's going to get it right, like almost 100% of the time. So in this case, I'm locked out of my MacBook. Here's a list of options related to OS X. It wasn't specific enough. So in this case, the back end is what we call semantic frame. So when the question comes in related to passwords, so a semantic frame gets dynamically generated that includes all the, we refer to them as slots, but all the questions that need to be answered to be able to make a recommendation to the requester. So a couple questions in, and with 100% confidence, the virtual agent is able to make a recommendation. So problem solved. It took, all of 30 seconds, get my password reset, deflect the call from the help desk. And the beautiful thing is, meanwhile, the L1 that otherwise would have spent 20 minutes on the phone is hopefully doing something that only a human being can do. Spending their time on, the 20% of the issues that are complex. Coaching, other teams, or training other teams about how to use technology, things that oftentimes just never make it, above the tree line, but we'd really like to be doing as an IT organization. The last example that I recorded here in this demo is non-IT related. Wouldn't it be great if all of the benefits questions, or payroll questions, or facilities questions that oftentimes end up in our inbox as IT, it would be great if we could just deflect those all by detecting what's the question and automatically responding based on it's all based on machine learning. So day one, it may not have the right answer, but after enough people ask the question and they say whether or not the virtual agent provided the right answer, very quickly it's going to zero in on the right answer, and no human needed to intervene. The only thing that happened to kind of get to this point is there's an initial training set, which typically looks like some historical incidents and some knowledge articles. And then from there, the learning takes place. Anyway, so that's just, again, really pragmatic, but that's kind of the future of an L0 experience. So conversational interaction. So we all know from living around whatever ITSM platforms we use, over the years it's gotten pretty hard to generate, to query the system even for simple stuff. If as a help desk manager I want to know, what's the MTTR for my VIP customers in the Midwest region for the last 30 days? Like, I count on maybe one hand how many people I've ever met that could credibly go in and execute that query pretty rapidly. But you know what? It was pretty easy for me to just make that statement. And if I could just go in and ask the virtual agent, hey, that's what I want, and it could just return a formatted list of stuff, we're there. This is not science fiction stuff. This is not Buck Rogers. Like, that's actually not that hard to do. But it's really hard if I'm living in the, in the web portal only. So request management, so this is kind of third view of the virtual agent. So this is put the virtual agent on top of self-service portal. So imagine some of you have had this frustration where you want to deflect calls, so invest a lot in a self-service portal, and to the nines, it's all ready to go. Your knowledge, your catalog, your incident submission, maybe you got social Q&A if you're super progressive, but then you launch it and call volume doesn't go down because oftentimes portals are a little bit complicated to use and adoption rates are slow. So one way to accelerate adoption is not just to get the eyeballs to the front page of the self-service portal, but make it really easy to navigate once they're there. So this is a pretty common use case, at least among Neva's customers, where you pop the virtual agent in response to the query. So in this case, query, I need to order an iPhone from Mary Weathers. So, well, now all of a sudden I've got the virtual agent, and the virtual agent is going to guide me to the right place in the portal so I don't end up asking for an iPhone using the incident submission form, or going into the facilities request form, and asking to provision a new server. It's probably a little bit far-fetched, that example, but nonetheless, we know all the ways that requesters can sometimes, have good intentions but misuse a self-service portal. It essentially goes away if you're interacting conversationally with an agent like that. So other use cases, and so here's an example of fulfiller assistance. I talked about the concept a couple times. Here's it real, live. So in this case, this is a Neva screenshot, but it applies certainly beyond what we're doing. Mostly, the thing I want to point out is the use case. So making that L1, that novice tech, an L2 or L3 in terms of level of sophistication, without them needing to go to training or anything else. Because now I see, if I want to phone a friend, there are 3 people, 2 of them are online right now. Knowledge, there are 3 articles that are relevant to this. So the query came in. This came in from the virtual agent. Virtual agent, the requester said, no, it didn't help. That's okay. The requester, it took them 20 seconds to get to this point, and now we just made the fulfiller that much smarter. So from the perspective of the requester, net impact is they're going to get their question answered quicker, and it's going to be more likely to be the accurate answer the first time. Predictive analytics, so this shows this manager dashboard. This shows what the impact is of automation on my health of services. So if I'm responsible for delivering whatever, Wi-Fi, email, CRM app, whatever it is, I can come here and say, I'll point to the bottom one in the middle, that's an entity bubble chart based on all the things, we refer to them as entities, but the topics that people are asking of the virtual agent. So at a glance I can see, does this align with the skills of my agents? Maybe, can't even read, it's an eye test for me, you probably can't see it either, but maybe that the big magenta one in the middle, is something about, I don't know, the latest virus that's threatening us, or how do I install the antivirus program, or whatever, just things that come up typically. And you may say, well, it's been a year since we did a refresh on getting our teams trained, or maybe, it didn't occur to me, but our knowledge content in the knowledge portal is 12 months out of date. That must be why there's been this rash in questions, because the knowledge is insufficient. So you can generate insights pretty quickly about where to spend your dollars, where to spend your time, when you can see automation trends in kind of a simple visual like that. The gear at the bottom left, I alluded to, we're all going to be kind of data scientists pretty soon. So this is a gauge that lets me show, do sensitivity analysis on the confidence threshold used to make predictions by the machine learning algorithms. So the algorithms are pretty hairy. It's a lot of complex science that goes into how to tune a machine learning algorithm. But if I've got a lever like that that says, hey, if I change my threshold, let's say, before I had to be 85% confident, or the machine learning algorithm had to be 85% confident before making a recommendation. What if instead it was 87%? Then, the accuracy is probably going to go up because less of the time will I be making, or all the time that I make a prediction, I'll be more confident in it. Accuracy is going to go up. But the corollary impact is that the frequency, the likelihood of making any recommendation is going to go down. So I can tune that, and it's using plain English. I can see it. Ratchet it up 2 points, and I can see this is the impact on frequency. This is the impact on accuracy. Bunch of science, bunch of classes I didn't need to take to be able to control the value or the benefits of machine learning using a gauge like that. So probably like a lot of this, like a lot of us, in the room, I think about the life cycle of a business service. And specifically with regard to AI, I think it's useful to think beyond the service desk about every element of the life cycle and how this orbit is going to be impacted very soon by AI and machine learning. So I'll talk through. You may not agree with all of my categories here in the life cycle, but I imagine if we're probably 10 to 15% off if you don't agree with all of them. So new service gets provisioned. So where's the impact of AI? So I can figure out where my workload should live. So I can look at past behavior and figure out, what's the cloud? What's the public cloud that's most cost effective, for instance? Lots of use cases here. I'm just going to pick off one or two for each of these. Capacity planning. So I can look at historical patterns of usage and figure out what's the optimal amount of capacity to deploy when I'm provisioning that service. Incident management. So all the use cases we've been talking about, the requester, the fulfiller, the manager. So problem management, I alluded to this earlier, but so machine learning is very effective at saying, the last time you successfully resolved this problem, here's how you did it, here's who was involved, here's the knowledge that got authored as a result of it, here's some things you want to try. Change management, so I alluded to this as well. So machine learning is really, really good at saying, here's the risk of this change. So this one, you know what, wait until after hours, and make sure you talk to these two people, because the last two times this change failed, they weren't involved, and they had to subsequently be involved, right? This time, we've seen this before, do it this way. Here's the risk. This is a 75%, versus the other stuff, upgrade the OS on that server, it's a 20% risk. Orchestration, so target-rich environment for machine learning. So everything about the process of orchestrating a workflow. So that could be everything from an approval process to onboarding an employee to provisioning a new Hadoop cluster, in a hybrid public-private cloud. All of those things can benefit greatly from looking at historical patterns of how these tasks were orchestrated. Remediation. So we're authoring knowledge, and it's an exceptional use of machine learning to be automatically consuming that knowledge to make recommendations in the context of a live problem or a proposed change about how to remediate it most effectively. So you get it right the first time. Similarly, root cause analysis. So very easy to look across large volumes of tasks, incidents, problems, changes, whatever, and be able to not just identify the root cause, but also automatically generate content to make sure that same problem doesn't occur in the future. I mentioned, the Gartner stat, 20% of business content by 2020. This is a good application of that. Knowledge management. So, a lot of the content will not just be, the authoring of it will not just be automated, but the consuming of it will be. So you saw the virtual agent, in a simplistic way, it's essentially, the world's smartest tech front-ending the world's smartest knowledge base. And lastly, monitoring. So great application of AI and machine learning to be able to look across high volumes of events, alarms, et cetera, from lots of different sources. Could have, probably your monitoring stack got pretty complicated over the last couple of years, and it probably looks like you got some APM tool, and you've got some systems monitoring tool, and now add to that, you've got, a web transaction monitoring tool, and quickly, you went from having just Nagios one day to having, SolarWinds and New Relic and a dozen others, and all of a sudden, you went from maybe tens or low hundreds of events to thousands, or when 6 billion new internet-connected devices come online, potentially millions of events per day. Well, great use of machine learning just to figure out what's the pattern, correlate them into the actual problems, get to the point where you can propose a change, remediate more accurately, feed that into your knowledge loop. Doesn't take a lot of innovative thinking to realize that this is the only way that we're going to effectively deal with the hundreds of millions or billions of new essentially consumers of IT services. So I think we'll all get pretty comfortable with some of these use cases pretty rapidly. So I've been talking about how, kind of the very pragmatic how is AI applied in IT. I thought I'd spend a few minutes talking about why. This is what really matters. So in order for us to become, kind of assert ourselves as more technology leaders to the business as opposed to the role that we've often been relegated to, kind of, playing digital whack-a-mole with problems and changes, in the face of kind of the increasing complexity of IT issues and a lot more people consuming our things and people consuming our services, how do we achieve our business objectives? How do we, improve our KPIs using, some of these new technologies? And how do they impact us? So downtime is an obvious driver. Probably talked about 12 different ways that applying machine learning in IT can reduce downtime, reducing mean time to resolution. So the more you can deflect to L0 automated self-service, obviously, you're going to reduce your MTTR, not just for the issues that are going through a virtual agent or your self-service channel, but also for all the other issues that come in. You now have a lot more bandwidth, so you're more likely to fix the complex stuff the right way the first time. Customer stat. I showed you a couple minutes worth of interactions with the virtual agent. It's a really good user experience. It's like the best user experience ever, because in fact, while we may come in with premonitions or whatever about, why the experience with an automated agent may be suboptimal, the fact is, I'd argue it's never worse than a human agent, because the worst thing that can happen is you're 10 or 15 seconds in and you say, you know what, it's not helping, and you pull the ripcord and you talk to a human. That's the worst thing that can happen. Even when that happens, the AI still gets trained on the fact that it didn't get it right, and it'll get smarter next time. There's almost always going to be a better experience, and in fact, I'd argue that most of the time, the requester's experience with the virtual agent, the only way they know that it's virtual, not that the virtual agent should ever pretend to be human, but the only real difference is that they're going to get an immediate answer. There's no delay at all, and it's almost always going to be the right answer, and if it's not, they're going to get guided to the right answer pretty rapidly. Reducing cost per ticket, again, pretty obvious, but to the extent that's a KPI for you, it quickly takes what most of us would say is kind of, a $15 average ticket for a human to answer the phone, and it drops it down to, you're in the pennies when you're in, L0 self-service via automation. So making IT more strategic, this is where I think, we really should ultimately drive value. It changes the fundamental relationship between IT and the business, and I think, unless you get a flywheel that, something like machine learning and AI can provide, I think it's really hard to figure out, how do you 10x or 50x your productivity so that you can, instead focus your time on educating the business about how to make better use of technology. Improving business outcomes. So hopefully all of us, do what we do because we want to make, our organizations more competitive. There's something that gives our organizations a competitive advantage, and that could be, whether you're in government, higher ed, your Synopsys in technology, your P&G making toothpaste. It doesn't matter, right? That organization exists to serve some business outcome, and if IT can be spending, we as an industry can be spending our time, better educating the broader organization about how to make better use of new technologies, we provide much more value than if we're, holed up in the call center fixing incidents one at a time. So if any of this kind of strikes a chord, like I said, I get pretty passionate about this. I think, I genuinely think the next 2 years are going to be more transformative in terms of how we work, maybe even why we work, than the previous 200. I read everything I can get my hands on. Here are 3 of my favorites. Good starting points. I mentioned a name early on, a guy who in 1956 coined the term artificial intelligence. He wrote a great book called The Emotion Machine, Marvin Minsky. Ray Kurzweil is, he's now at Google. His title's like futurist or something. We should all be lucky. I'll be so lucky as to work at Google and have a title futurist. I don't know what he does, but he's the founder of this this quite progressive way of thinking called singularity, and so Ray and his followers believe that we're rapidly approaching the point where silicon-based and carbon-based life forms will converge, and how to create a mind is all about the kind of the philosophy behind singularity. Interesting read. John Brockman wrote an interesting book. It's kind of a good entry point to some of this stuff. What to think about machines that think. So what does it look like in the next 10 to 20 years to have your colleague potentially be a sentient thinking machine? Very thought-provoking, but I think all 3 are good reads. So I told Carrie I would try to, with her permission, I would try to leave some time for discussion. And so Carrie, if that's okay, if I've got another few minutes, I would love to open up and ask some questions. You can cane me off the stage anytime, but I did tease that you'd have homework, and the homework is my main question to you. So I'm interested in maybe just take a couple of responses and then make sure we leave time for Larry. But the homework was, why are you better than a bot? And I'd be interested in your feedback about any of these questions. Do you perceive these themes as more threat, more opportunity? How will the business and IT benefit from automation? What should we as leaders do to kind of guide our organizations forward? And then last and not least, your homework question. Any thoughts? Can you inspire us?
Anybody on the phone, Karen and Pleasanton, please, anybody there wants to pick up Dan's question first? Karen and Pleasanton, as I turn on my microphone. Yeah.
Yes, here we are. So does anyone have any questions, or does anybody have any thoughts around why we are better than a bot? Everybody's staring at the screen, I'm going to say.
I would say the created is always better, or the creator is always better than the created. So a bot has to be created, right? So that would mean at least someone's better. What's that?
I said someone has to tweet that out. That's very tweetable.
Tweet it and do, at SFHDI. He'll hit our feed for today. We have a brave person here in Mountain View also. Go ahead.
Call for it now.
I'm better than a bot because I can empathize.
Because what?
Because I can empathize.
Empathize.
Okay.
There and after that.
Another tweetable phrase. Hang on.
Steve.
So it's beyond cognitive, right? It's about empathy. It's about human emotions. It's about judgment. It's about compassion. So the element of being is different between humans and machines. And that element of being together will always be there for humans or for all living forms. And I don't know if we have to limit it to humans alone. I think we have to see it consciousness versus machines and bot.
Yeah. Like this gentleman said, empathy. I think that's good examples.
Next. Who else?
San Francisco.
Go for it.
Okay. I would change the question just a little bit and not say if humans are better than bots, but I would say that humans and bots are better than bots by themselves. And so I think it's more of the combination of the two as opposed to one versus the other.
Well said.
I would say, my perspective, why am I better than the bot? I would say that it's better for a bot to do mind-numbing work than me, and for me to do something that is the features of human.
Terry, we lost you. We didn't hear the end of that.
Actually, because I realized I have two microphones, I was talking to the wrong one. I say that why am I better than a bot? I say because it's better for a bot to do this mind-numbing work than the human who can do more things that are more, uses the strength of the human more.
Agreed. Any other inspirations?
Got one more?
This is actually a question. As bots actually take over more of the logical side of the experience of reality, who here thinks that maybe humans will possibly become more empathetic? Like if we don't have to specialize in things that bots are specializing in, like will it open up a new, like, you know, will we sort of survival of the fittest, like become more empathetic because we don't have to be robots anymore? You know?
Good thought. You're all the experts. What say you?
Do we have any psychology majors in the room?
There you go. Give this man a mic.
Thank you.
I think it's funny that you actually bring up the point that bots could make. Bots don't have empathy when artificial intelligence has been around since '56, and the first bot, the first chat bot, was actually a therapy bot called Eliza, as I'm sure some of you in here are familiar with. And the thing that made it so addicting to the first people who used it was the fact that it felt very empathetic to talk to something that actually listened to you, and you could drone on for forever. And the guy who was organizing that study had to cut it off because it was scary to him that it drew that person in so much because it like feigned that empathy so well.
I think it only had like 3 responses too. It was very simplistic.
Yeah, it was
The
like the
experimenter
most
was amazed.
basic thing ever, and it still got that person going. So
Like yes or no.
they're better
maybe.
than we are.
Yeah. Right. Tell me about your mother.
Got one here?
You had pointed out some books in your slide. I'll recommend another one. There's a book a couple of years ago, maybe about 5-7 years ago, by Daniel Pink called A Whole New Mind. And this really spells out, I think, what we're talking about here. And it's the machine, it's the left brain analytic, it's the reading, writing, arithmetic, it's the rote tasks that bots can kind of take over. And the right brain, which is why I'm better than a bot, partially, is the empathy, the compassion, the creativity, and that artistic side. And I think to this gentleman's point, I think, yes, if we continue down this path and we do it right, I think we can become more compassionate and have more empathy.
Yeah. Good perspective.
My name is Daniel. I work at a community college with special population students who are come from lives of lots of disruption, you might say. And you talk about disruptive technology. Will this type of technology make people with disrupted lives have more disruption, if you understand what I'm saying? For instance, they're surviving being an Uber driver, or they're surviving working at Jack in the Box. And that's the best they have for them right now, but their lives are disruption. So will this just create more disruption for people whose lives are already constantly disrupted?
I think new technologies are more likely to assist them than displace them. And there's amazing work being done in technology, whether it's to assist people who have a physical handicap or a mental handicap. One of the things that AI is being used to do is actually augment cognition. So there are things, really interesting research being done in augmented reality or virtual reality that are being proven to reduce the frequency that autistic patients have bouts of autism. So where they're actually training on brainwaves to be able to take people that otherwise might not be able to fully function in the workplace and actually kind of mitigate the impact of their disability.
I get that, but I'm not talking about people with disabilities. I'm talking about people on the low end of the economic strata.
Yeah.
Right now in Silicon Valley, 1 out of 5 children are hungry. And they come from families with parents who work, sometimes 2 jobs, but still struggle with the cost of housing. Yeah. So they're working 2 part-time minimum wage jobs to put food on the table because they're spending all their money on housing. Yeah. So what I'm saying is disrupting their already fragile existence with replacement with artificial intelligence solutions. How will that help?
Yeah, it's very good topic. I think I defer to any economists in the room, but I'd be curious to debate. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about the changing nature of work, right? I mean, and if you look at let's not bring up politics too hard, but if you look at the polarization, right, and part of that is because there is a part of the population that's looking to do the work that they used to do, and there's a lot of fear around the fact that it's gone, and maybe it's never coming back. Some of us think, that way, but this is a real fear, and that's why some of those headlines are what they are, because you can sell content off of those fear headlines. But the reality is the work is changing. I mean, I've seen that in my generation, that the work that my grandparents had and the work ethic that they needed to apply towards that is different than the work ethic that most of us in this room have to have in the type of work that we do. So
good
maybe we don't, some people say maybe work in the way that we know of it will just be completely different at some time in the future. Yeah, that's a good one. And if you look to Alaska for some of what happened, when they give every citizen of Alaska a minimum stipend, there are things that have happened in Alaska because of that.
Magnus may have feedback on that. Yeah.
Magnus doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah. So I have a question. How do you see AIs affecting education and the development of critical thinking?
I think that's a very conversation to have, and I certainly wouldn't claim to be an expert, but like this gentleman's question about what does it do to the composition of the workforce, and I mean, I think the easy answer is that there's a lot of great innovations in K-8 education. I've got two young daughters in school, and to me it's amazing, looking back versus when I was in elementary school to the ways that they learn. It's so much more effective. One of the things I think is an important principle that, this is me editorializing a bit, but I think it's much more important for them to know where to get the answer and how to get the answer rather than memorizing the answer. And I find, there are a lot of teaching tools that they're using that I think actually encourage more kind of strategic thinking that, to me, that's net positive for us as a society. And I hope that these are trends that aren't just, that we don't just benefit from in Silicon Valley. I hope that we change, on a global basis, we use new technology to better train, kids from K on up to be productive citizens in the new world. Anyone else have any other more insights on that topic? I mean, there are whole sessions that we could do, whole days that we could do just discussing that question, or Daniel's question as well.
Well, let's look at a practical example and that Larry has to share.
Yeah.
We can carry on the conversation from there, and then of course we have our door prize drawings.
Okay.
I'll
leave my contact info up there. Anyone?
And I'll get your slides and we'll send that out along with the recording.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and pull your computer because I'm using mine. Yeah. Thanks. Yes, good use of time there, Mandy. So for our folks in Pleasanton and San Francisco, they will have opportunity for our door prize drawings from the chapter, but we don't have somebody from Insight there. Okay, good. Are you going to do a raffle there? Excellent. Yeah. That's good news. Where's my WebEx?
So I'm sure everybody has enjoyed Dan's talk, Dan. I really appreciate the insight and the effort that you went into preparing that. We thought we wanted to talk a little bit about what companies are doing now to integrate some of these technologies into their service and support. And so at Fujitsu, we've been doing some of that. We've started out somewhat small. We have a lot of investment in R&D for AI, but implementing it within the service and support side, we've taken it a lot easier. And
that's why.
Because of the kind of business that we are, we're in the business of IT outsourcing. So we have multiple customers, multiple vendors. We have to be, everything we do kind of needs to work with different technologies, different ticketing systems. It could be any number of things that are variables for us. One of the activities, you know, the next slide. One of the things that we've done has been about.
Let me do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's for me. One of the things that we did was with what's called robotic process automation, and it's a form of automation that doesn't necessarily leverage all of the benefits of AI and some of those kinds of things, but allows us to really easily take the kinds of work that we maybe don't enjoy doing, the repetitive, the boring, the stuff that that doesn't make sense for a human to do, and automate it. And we've done a variety of things with it. I am only going to share probably just one item here, but I hit the next one. So in our NOC, one of the things that we did is we've got automation to open tickets based on alerts that come up. But when that alert happens, somebody then has to go back and close the ticket at some point. And what we found was that by using the RPA, it was a very simple use case where we could say, hey, the alert's here, the ticket is acknowledged, it's open. We double check the work, make sure the system hasn't come up on its own, that maybe it was a failed ping or something, and then either redirect the ticket to a human or to move it into the closed status as self-resolved. That's one particular use case where we found that it was allowing us to free up the labor, the people that were doing the work, and give them other activities to do without. We didn't actually reduce headcount. We just had more work that we were able to give them to do. So there was no disruption in that sense. I have some other use cases, but in the interest of time, I think we'll kind of go on. Maybe you want to throw the next one up, and then people can just look at it. But this was something that we did for a customer where we automated the process of taking the tickets and determining kind of doing the QA aspect, like going through and seeing who screwed up and then being able to coach them, but being able to report back really simply without having to do all the analysis first, be able to do that. So Terry, you want to kind of wrap up with the drawing and things?
Yes, thanks. Okay, thank you, Larry. So hopefully you've gotten some food for thought. Thanks for the excellent presentation, Dan. On the future of AI, I have a gift for you. It is a HDI notepad so that you will always be thinking of us, although it sounds like you have a history that goes back to Ron Munns that's longer than many of us. So anyway, thank you so much for coming to talk to us. We did have a member of the Orange County chapter that joined for your presentation as well. So I gave him the special WebEx link that's for local chapter officers. And we're going to do the regular drawing first, and then we'll do yours as the grand prize drawing, Mandy. Kathy, are we ready? And please do, if you have not already, get your QR reader here. Do our survey for us. We really, really, really want you to do the survey.